Hey everybody, my name is Yahima Monticello, and I'll be going over Unit 1 Interactive Assessment. I'll be discussing Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and Appendix C. Also, if you have any questions regarding this video, please feel free to email me or reply to the video that I post on Dashboard. And let's get right into it. So in Appendix C, I learned about the different types of psychologists. These are just a few examples that I found. So I'm pretty sure we all know about community psychologists and counseling psychologists. Community psychologists deal with broad mental health issues, and counseling psychologists help people adjust to life changes or they help them transition into a new life. So the first one is a clinical psychologist. Clinical psychologists promote psychological health. They also engage in research. Cognitive psychologists study the thought process and focus on, these are just a few examples: perception, language, attention, problem solving, memory, judgment. Forensic psychologists, they basically deal with public policies regarding mental health issues. Sport psychologists study the psychological factors in people who participate in sports. Psychometric and quantitative psychologists, they study methods and techniques used to acquire psychological knowledge. And you'll mostly find these psychologists in clinical and school settings. Chapter 1. So in Chapter 1, what really stuck out to me was the scientific attitude and the 4 big ideas in psychology. So with scientific attitude comes curiosity, skepticism, and humility. So this was just like a general thing that I understood. So if, as a scientist, you're curious about something, you always make your hypothesis and you make assumptions about whatever situation is in front of you, and you try to figure out how to approach it. With skepticism, the way you approach it, you question what you're trying to approach. And humility, depending on how you approach it, if you approached it incorrectly, you have to recognize that, hey, this was not the way to go. I have to backtrack, go back to it again, and find a different way to approach it. So the 4 big ideas in psychology are critical thinking, biopsychosocial approach, 2-track mind, and exploring human strengths. So with critical thinking, you always want to think smarter, weigh evidence, and test conclusions. The biopsychosocial approach, basically the biological, psychological, and social cultural behavioral of any person that you, let's put this in a client kind of perspective, you want to understand how they functioned in a sense, whether it be a previous client or a current client or a future client that you might have. I also believe this kind of ties in with the exploring human strengths by understanding behaviors and emotions. So the 2-track mind goes into perception, thinking, memory, and attitude. In attitude, you have the conscious and unconscious type of attitude. So in Chapter 2, it primarily talked about different types of systems in the human body. We have the nervous system, the peripheral nervous system, and the endocrine system. So I didn't write down all the systems just for time's sake, but you could always go back and look further into the systems, and anytime in the video you could always pause it and take your time to read anything that I have. So with the nervous system, you want to take information in from the world. That's basically what it does. So the PNS talks about the somatic and the autonomic. Somatic monitors input and triggers output. The autonomic controls your glands and the muscles of your internal organs, and the endocrine system secretes hormones. So in Chapter 2, the limbic system was talked. It contains, these 3 things that enable aggression and fear, maintain internal steady state, and process of facts and events, which I think is very, very important. So I believe this has been talked about for a very long time, about one side of the brain being very artistic, and the other side of the brain focusing more on the educational part of anything in the world. And these are my references. So any pictures that you saw in the slideshow, they're here, and it's open to everybody. So I imagine everybody could use these pictures, and yeah, I just thought they were pretty cool. So thank you for following along. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me or message me, and I'll respond as soon as possible. All right, bye bye.